No one remembered when the orphan first appeared. People only knew that one day he was simply there, sleeping near the edge of the market, curled against stone walls, or standing quietly where he did not belong. He had no name anyone used for long. Some called him boy. Others called him nothing at all. Most days he learned to answer to silence. He grew up watching life happen from a distance. Families passed him with full baskets and tired laughter. Children ran ahead of their parents, careless and loud, their futures already claimed by someone waiting at home. He learned early not to stare too long. Looking made the hunger worse. Looking made the emptiness heavier. The orphan did not remember his parents. He did not even remember losing them. His life began already broken, like a story missing its first pages. Sometimes, late at night, he tried to imagine a past, hands that once held him, a voice that said his name with care, but the images never stayed. They slipped away like water through fingers. Hunger was his first teacher. It taught him patience, then shame. It taught him how to swallow pride before food. Cold was the second. It taught him how small a body could curl and still survive. Loneliness came last, and it stayed the longest. It was quieter than hunger, deeper than cold. It wrapped around him even when others stood nearby. People rarely looked at him directly. Their eyes passed over his face as if he were part of the ground, another stone to step around. When someone did notice him, it was often with suspicion or pity, never with belonging. He learned that being seen did not mean being known. Inside, the orphan carried a simple wish he never spoke aloud. He wanted proof that he mattered. Not greatness. Not wealth. Just one clear sign that his life was not a mistake that kept breathing. But hope was dangerous. Hope made the nights longer. So he trained himself to expect very little. He told himself that pain repeated because pain was all there was. Tomorrow, he believed, would look exactly like today, just colder, just heavier, just harder to survive. Fate felt like a wall built before he was born. No matter how he moved, it did not move back. Sometimes he wondered if choice was a lie people told themselves to sleep better. He watched others make decisions, yes, but they had options. He had needs. Hunger did not wait for dreams. Cold did not care about courage. When survival is the only goal, choice feels like a story meant for someone else. At night, lying awake beneath broken roofs or open skies, he listened to the world breathe. The wind through empty streets. The distant call of animals. The quiet footsteps of people who belong somewhere. In those moments he felt small, but also strangely alert, as if something beyond the dark was listening too. There were nights when the air felt different. Thicker. Watching. He could not explain it, and he did not try. The orphan had learned that questions without answers only led to disappointment. Still, the feeling stayed, a sense that his life was paused, not finished. That the story had not ended, only waited. On one such night, as the moon hung low and pale, he felt it again. That silent pull. Not toward food. Not toward shelter. Toward something else. Something he could not name, only feel. He sat up slowly, heart beating faster for no clear reason. The streets were empty. The world looked the same as always. And yet, deep inside, something whispered, not in words but in certainty. This was not the end of his waiting. Somewhere nearby, unseen and untouched, something had been waiting too. The pull did not feel like curiosity. It felt like hunger, but not the kind that lived in the stomach. The orphan rose before dawn, while the city still slept in broken pieces. The streets were quiet in a way that felt unnatural, as if even sound was holding its breath. He walked without a clear plan, his feet moving ahead of his thoughts, guided by something deeper than reason. He knew where he was going long before he admitted it to himself. At the far edge of the city stood a place people avoided without ever agreeing to avoid it. No walls blocked the path. No guard stood watch. Yet no one went there. Not children chasing games. Not traders cutting corners. Not even the desperate like him. They called it different names depending on who you asked. Some said it was cursed. Others said it was empty and useless, picked clean by time. A few claimed bad things happened there long ago, things no one wanted to remember clearly. The orphan had passed it many times before, always from a distance. A ruined structure crouched under the weight of years, half swallowed by vines and shadow. The roof had collapsed in places. Windows stared out like blind eyes. Even birds avoided resting there. As he drew closer, the air grew colder. Not sharply, just enough to notice. The ground beneath his feet changed too, softer, layered with fallen leaves and dust that had not been disturbed in years. Each step felt louder than it should have, as if the place noticed him arriving. He hesitated at the edge. Every story he had overheard pressed against his mind now. Warnings whispered between adults. Sudden silences when questions were asked. He had learned long ago that fear often survived longer than truth. But desperation has a voice of its own. He stepped inside. The smell hit him first: old wood, damp stone, and something else beneath it. Not rot. Not death. Something unfinished. The light dimmed quickly, bending around broken beams and cracked walls. Dust hung in the air, catching weak sunlight like frozen breath. The orphan moved slowly, his heart pounding in his ears. Each sound felt magnified. A shift of stone. The creak of timber. The soft brush of his sleeve against a wall that had not felt human touch in years. This place carried weight. He could feel it in the way the silence pressed back, thick and watchful. It did not feel empty. It felt forgotten, and angry about it. He walked deeper, following the same instinct that had drawn him here. Not toward shelter. Not toward safety. Toward the center, where the shadows gathered more tightly. Time felt strange inside. He could not tell how long he had been walking when he reached a small inner room, half collapsed and hidden behind fallen boards. It looked unimportant. Just another corner claimed by ruin. Yet his chest tightened the moment he saw it. Something was there. He pushed aside debris, coughing as dust rose around him. His hands brushed against old cloth, splintered wood, and finally, something solid. Smooth. Cold. He uncovered it slowly. A mirror. It was smaller than he expected. Framed in dark, worn material, chipped at the edges, dulled by age. It did not shine. It did not glow. There were no markings, no signs of value. It looked like something long ago set aside and never reclaimed. Unremarkable. The orphan stared at his reflection. At least he expected to. But the glass did not catch the light the way it should have. It did not clearly reflect his face. Instead, the surface seemed dimmer than the room itself, as if it held its own shadow. A chill crept along his arms. He told himself it was nothing. Just old glass. Just poor light. Just another broken thing in a broken place. Still he did not put it down. The silence thickened around him, pressing close, almost breathing. For the first time since entering, the orphan felt certain of one thing. He had not found the mirror by accident. And this place, this forgotten, avoided place, had not been empty at all. It had been waiting. The orphan held the mirror closer, expecting his own face to sharpen in the glass. It did not. At first he thought the surface was simply dirty. He rubbed it with his sleeve, slow and careful, as if sudden movement might break something fragile. The glass remained dim, refusing to shine. His outline was there, but wrong. Blurred. Faded. Like a memory that could not fully return. A tight feeling settled in his chest. He tilted the mirror slightly, catching what little light slipped through the broken roof. Still nothing clear. His eyes should have stared back at him. His thin face. His tired gaze. But the reflection did not follow his movements the way it should have. Instead, the image inside the glass shifted on its own. The orphan froze. His first thought was hunger. He had gone too long without food. His second was exhaustion. Too many nights without rest. The mind, he knew, could play cruel tricks when the body was weak. He lowered the mirror, breathing slowly, waiting for the world to steady itself. When he raised it again, the glass no longer showed the room behind him. It showed a street. Not this ruined place. Not this moment. The street in the mirror was brighter, cleaner. People moved through it, shapes at first, then faces. He leaned closer, heart racing, afraid to blink. The scene felt real in a way his imagination never had. The light moved naturally. Shadows fell where they should. And then he saw himself. Older. Not much, but different. His shoulders were straighter. His face less hollow. He stood in that future street with someone beside him, their presence close enough to matter. The image flickered, breaking apart before he could understand more. The orphan staggered back, nearly dropping the mirror. "No," he whispered, though no one was there to hear him. His hands shook as he set the mirror on the ground. His mind raced, grasping for simple answers. A trick of light. A crack in the glass. A reflection of something behind him. But when he looked around, the room was empty. Silent. Unchanged. Slowly, against every instinct screaming at him to leave, he picked the mirror up again. This time the image was different. A moment flashed, brief and sharp. Rain falling hard. The same street, darker now. Someone was running. Fear tightened the orphan's chest before he even knew why. The scene broke apart again, leaving only darkness in the glass. He dropped the mirror. It did not shatter. That frightened him more than if it had. The orphan backed away until his shoulders hit the wall. His breath came fast and shallow. He pressed his palms to his eyes, counting silently, waiting for the strange images to fade like bad dreams. When he looked again, the mirror lay where it had fallen, calm and dull, reflecting nothing clearly. Part of him wanted to run, to leave the place and never return. Whatever this object was, it did not belong in his hands. He had lived his whole life learning to avoid things that brought attention. Strange things always came with a cost. Still, something inside him would not let him go. He knelt again, slower now. Careful. He lifted the mirror once more. This time the image held longer. He saw himself standing at a distance, watching an event unfold. His heart recognized the feeling before his mind could explain it. Fear mixed with helplessness. Someone fell. Someone cried out. The orphan in the mirror did not move fast enough. The image shattered into fragments of light and shadow. The orphan gasped and pulled the mirror away, his hands sweating against the cold frame. This was not the present. This was not memory. This was tomorrow. The truth settled over him like weight. Heavy. Unwanted. Terrifying. Wonder never touched him. Only dread. If this mirror showed the future, it was not doing so kindly. It did not show victories or joy clearly. It showed moments already bending toward pain. Moments that felt fixed, as if the glass was not offering possibilities, but warnings. His stomach twisted. He thought of his own life. Of how little control he had ever held. Of how tomorrow had always hurt him before it arrived. Now tomorrow was staring back at him, silent and unblinking. And it knew him. The orphan's gaze returned to the mirror one last time before lowering it. In the darkened glass, a final image appeared, brief but unmistakable. Him, standing alone, looking at the mirror with the same fear he felt now. Only older. Only closer to something he did not yet understand. The orphan did not sleep that night. He left the ruined place before the sun rose, carrying the mirror wrapped in torn cloth, holding it close to his chest as if it might disappear if he loosened his grip. Every step away from the building felt wrong, like walking off a path meant only for him. The city looked the same as always, yet nothing felt familiar anymore. He found shelter beneath a broken awning near the edge of the street. The air was cold. His body was tired. Still, his eyes refused to close. The mirror rested beside him. For a long time he did not touch it. Fear sat heavy in his chest, thick and steady. If he looked again, he might see something he could never forget. If he did not look, the images would still exist, waiting, unchanged. He realized then that knowing the future was not power. It was pressure. Finally, as the sky began to pale, he reached for the mirror. His hands trembled as he lifted it. The glass darkened first, like water before a storm. Then shapes began to form. Slowly. Carefully. As if the mirror was deciding what he was ready to see. This time the future was gentler. He saw himself standing in sunlight. Not hiding. Not curled against stone. He looked steady. Someone stood near him again. Their presence filled the space beside him in a way that felt warm. The orphan's throat tightened. He had never imagined himself like this. Not truly. Hope stirred, fragile and painful. Then the image shifted. The warmth faded. The light dimmed. The same figures appeared again, but now one was missing. The orphan in the mirror reached out, his face twisting with loss. The scene blurred, breaking apart before the pain could fully land. The orphan pulled the mirror away, gasping. His heart raced. His thoughts tangled. The future held both. Joy and loss. Belonging and grief. And the mirror did not explain which came first, or why. He tried again, slower this time. He learned quickly that rushing the mirror brought nothing but darkness. When his breath calmed, the images returned more clearly. When fear took over, the glass clouded. The mirror was not showing a single path. It was showing many. Some moments repeated. Others changed slightly each time. Small differences. A step taken earlier. A face turned away instead of toward him. The orphan began to understand something terrifying. The future was not fixed, but it was fragile. Each vision carried a feeling with it. Regret. Relief. Fear. Hope. The mirror did not show full stories, only moments where choices mattered most. Crossroads. Turning points. His mind reeled. If the future could change, then so could blame. If he acted, he might prevent pain. If he failed to act, the pain would still happen. Only now he would know he had seen it coming. The orphan pressed his forehead to his knees, the mirror resting in his lap. His chest felt tight, heavy with questions he had never been asked before. Choice. For someone who had lived without it, choice felt like a burden too large to carry. As the sun rose fully, casting pale light across the street, he lifted the mirror again. This time the image came fast. A child. Younger than him. Small. Standing near the edge of a crowded road. The sound of rushing movement filled the glass. Fear flashed across the child's face. The orphan's breath caught. The vision froze on that moment, danger close enough to feel. Then the glass went dark. The orphan stared at his own reflection at last, faint and uncertain. His face looked the same. Thin. Marked by hunger and time. But his eyes were different now. Awake in a way they had never been before. Someone was going to get hurt. And the mirror had chosen to show him. He lowered the glass slowly, his heart pounding. The weight of the knowledge pressed down on him, bending his thoughts, changing the way the world felt around him. The street noises returned. Voices. Footsteps. Life moving forward without knowing what waited ahead. For the first time, the orphan understood that tomorrow was not just something to endure. It was something he could affect. And that realization frightened him more than the mirror ever could. He wrapped the mirror again and held it close, staring toward the road where the vision had taken place. The question burned inside him, sharp and unavoidable. If he could change what he had seen, should he? The orphan tried to live as he always had. He walked the same streets, slept in the same hidden corners, watched the same faces pass by without seeing him. But nothing felt the same anymore. Every moment now carried a shadow behind it, an echo of what might come next. Sleep became shallow and broken. When he closed his eyes, the mirror followed him. Not as images but as feelings. Sudden fear. Sharp regret. The heavy pause before something went wrong. He woke often with his heart racing, his hands clenched as if still holding the glass. During the day his thoughts refused to stay still. Every sound made him turn. Every movement felt important. He studied people the way he once studied food, carefully, desperately, afraid of missing something vital. The mirror stayed wrapped and hidden beneath his thin bedding. He did not look at it for a while. He told himself he needed distance, rest, space to think. But the knowing did not leave him. The image of the child near the road returned again and again. The fear in that small face felt too real to ignore. He found himself drifting toward that part of the city without planning to, his feet betraying his hesitation. Each time he stopped short. What if he was wrong? What if the mirror lied? What if his interference caused something worse? The questions circled him like birds waiting for weakness. He had spent his whole life surviving by staying unnoticed. Acting meant stepping into view. Acting meant risk. Yet doing nothing now felt different. Before, inaction had been forced on him by lack of power. Now it felt like a choice, and that made it heavier. One night, unable to bear the uncertainty, he unwrapped the mirror again. The glass resisted at first, dull and unresponsive. His hands shook as he waited, his breath shallow. Slowly the image formed. The same road. The same child. This time the moment lasted longer. He saw himself nearby, standing just far enough away to help, or to walk past. The future split in front of him, thin and trembling. In one path he turned away. The image shifted quickly then, blurred, chaotic, filled with noise and sudden stillness. The mirror darkened. The orphan's stomach twisted. He did not need to see more. He understood. If he did nothing, the loss would happen. And he would carry it even if no one else ever knew. He lowered the mirror, pressing it against his chest. His heart hurt in a way hunger never had. This pain was deeper. It came from knowing that someone else's fate now rested, at least partly, in his hands. Was this a gift? Or a curse meant to break him? He thought of his own life, how often he had wished someone would notice him, help him, choose him. No one ever had. The world had moved past him without slowing. Now he was being asked to slow it for someone else. The orphan sat alone with the decision as the night wore on. He imagined the danger, the confusion, the eyes that might turn toward him if he stepped forward. Fear clawed at his chest. But beneath the fear was something new, a quiet sense of right and wrong. He had lived believing fate was a closed door, that tomorrow would always hurt the same way today did. But the mirror had cracked that belief open. Pain repeated, but not always by necessity. Sometimes it repeated because no one stopped it. The orphan exhaled slowly. He wrapped the mirror again, tighter this time, not as something to hide from, but as something to carry. His hands stopped shaking. His choice settled in his chest, heavy but clear. He would act, not because he was brave, not because he believed things would turn out well, but because now that he knew, turning away would be worse than any consequence the future could offer. As the first light of morning crept over the rooftops, the orphan stood and faced the road where the vision waited to become real. Whatever tomorrow held, he would not face it by looking away. The road looked smaller in real life than it had in the mirror. That was the first thing the orphan noticed as he approached it. Narrower, quieter, less dramatic than the moment that had haunted his thoughts for days. People moved through it as they always did, walking, talking, distracted by their own lives. None of them knew how close this place stood to a turning point. The child from the vision was there. Younger than the orphan had first thought. Standing near the edge of the road, toes close to danger, attention pulled elsewhere. The orphan felt his heart tighten. The mirror had not lied. For a moment, fear froze him in place. If he stepped forward now, eyes would turn. Questions might follow. Suspicion. He was used to being invisible. Visibility had never been safe. The memory of the mirror pressed against his chest like a weight. He moved. Not fast. Not boldly. Just enough. The orphan crossed the distance and reached the child in time to pull them back as something rushed past. Too close, too fast. The moment passed in a blur of motion and noise, then silence. The child stared up at him, confused but unharmed. Around them life continued. No one shouted. No crowd gathered. No great moment marked the change. It was done. The orphan stepped back, his hands shaking. Relief washed over him so strongly it almost knocked him off balance. The future he had seen, broken, altered, stopped. For the first time he felt something close to triumph. But it did not last. That night, when the city settled into darkness, he unwrapped the mirror again. His hands moved with confidence now, steadier than before. He expected the glass to confirm what he already felt, that he had done the right thing. The mirror darkened. Then it showed him something else. A different street. A different time. Someone else stood in trouble now. Older than the child. Closer to the orphan's own age. The details were unclear, but the feeling was sharp and unmistakable. Fear. Loss. Blame. The orphan's breath caught. He leaned closer, desperate to understand. The image shifted again, faster now, less stable. Faces blurred. Moments overlapped. The mirror no longer showed clean paths. It showed tangled ones. He saw himself in that future too. Not helping. Not arriving in time. Standing apart. Recognized now, not ignored. Eyes turned toward him with anger. With accusation. The mirror slipped from his hands and struck the ground. Still it did not break. The orphan backed away, his chest tight, his thoughts racing. The relief he had felt earlier twisted into something else. Guilt, sharp and sudden. By saving one future, he had disturbed another. The realization settled slowly and painfully. The mirror did not show isolated events. It showed balance. And he had tipped it. Over the next days, the visions grew harder to read. The glass clouded more often. Images came fragmented, layered with emotion instead of clarity. When the orphan felt fear, the mirror darkened. When he felt anger, the images sharpened cruelly. When he felt calm, they softened, but never fully returned to what they had been. The mirror was changing. Or perhaps it was responding. The orphan began to understand that the mirror did not exist apart from him. It reflected more than time. It reflected intention, doubt, fear, control. Each time he tried to force an outcome, the visions became harsher. Each time he hesitated, the future grew colder. There was no clean solution. No perfect choice. One night, exhausted and shaking, he lifted the mirror again. The image formed slowly. This time he barely recognized the person staring back. It was him, but hardened. His eyes were sharp, guarded. People stepped away from him instead of past him. He stood at the center of something heavy and irreversible. His hands were stained, not with blood, but with responsibility he had never wanted. The orphan dropped to his knees. This was not who he wanted to become. He had acted to save someone, to do good. Yet the mirror now showed a future shaped by control, by fear of making the wrong choice again. A future where every decision was made not with compassion, but with calculation. He pressed his palms to his face, fighting the urge to scream. The mirror lay silent beside him. For the first time since finding it, the orphan considered destroying it. Ending this burden. Ending the weight of knowing. But deep inside, another truth waited. The mirror was not the problem. The need to control tomorrow was. He looked down at the glass one last time that night, his reflection faint and broken. The future inside it watched him too, uncertain, shifting, waiting. Whatever came next, he could no longer pretend that saving one moment came without cost. And somewhere ahead, the future he feared most was already taking shape. The orphan avoided the mirror for days. He kept it wrapped, hidden beneath layers of cloth and fear, as if distance alone could undo what he had already seen. But the future did not stay inside the glass. It followed him, in looks that lingered too long, in whispers he imagined behind him, in the growing sense that he was no longer invisible. Something had changed. People noticed him now. Not with kindness. with uncertainty, with suspicion. He felt it when conversation stopped as he passed, when eyes flicked toward him then away, when space opened around him where none had before. He told himself it was coincidence, that his mind was still tangled from the mirror's visions. But deep down he knew better. One night, unable to carry the not knowing any longer, he unwrapped the mirror again. His hands shook harder than they ever had before. The glass did not resist this time. It did not darken slowly or test his patience. The image appeared at once, sharp and unforgiving. He saw himself standing in a crowded place. People surrounded him, but none stood beside him. Their faces were tight with anger and fear. Some pointed. Some turned away as if he were dangerous. Words were thrown at him like stones, though he could not hear them. The orphan's chest tightened until it hurt. The image shifted. He saw the aftermath. Not chaos, judgment. Doors closing. Hands pulling children away from him. His name, whatever it was by then, spoken only in blame. He had not meant to harm anyone. He had tried to help. But the future did not care about intention. The mirror showed him standing alone again, older now, carrying the weight of many choices. His eyes were tired in a way the orphan recognized too well. This time the loneliness was louder. The glass went dark. The orphan dropped the mirror and pressed his hands to the ground, breathing hard. Shame flooded him, thick and burning. He had wanted to matter. He had wanted to belong. Now the future showed him remembered, but only as a warning. Tears stung his eyes, surprising him. He had learned long ago not to cry. Tears never changed hunger, never brought warmth. But this pain was different. It came from knowing he might hurt others no matter what he chose. Maybe this was his punishment. Maybe someone like him, unloved, unwanted, was never meant to shape tomorrow. The thought cut deeper than fear. He picked up the mirror again, anger rising through the shame. For the first time he felt the urge to end it, to smash the glass and free himself from the burden it carried. Without the mirror, tomorrow would return to being a mystery, cruel but familiar. He lifted it high. His arms trembled. Then he hesitated. In the dim reflection he saw himself as he was now. Thin, afraid, trying. He saw the boy who had lived his whole life without anyone choosing him, and the young man who had chosen to help anyway. Destroying the mirror would not erase the choices he had already made, and it would not erase the ones he still had to make. The orphan lowered the mirror slowly, his anger draining into exhaustion. He realized then that the mirror was not condemning him. It was showing him what fear could turn him into. The future it revealed was not fixed. It was a warning, not of what must happen, but of what would happen if he let control replace compassion. He sat there for a long time, holding the mirror without looking into it. The silence around him felt heavy, but no longer hostile. He felt the loneliness keenly, but also something steadier beneath it. Responsibility. Not for every future, just for his own choices. When he finally wrapped the mirror again, his hands were calmer. He did not know how to fix what he had already set in motion. He did not know how to act without causing harm. But he knew one thing. Running from the truth would only make it sharper. If the mirror showed him a future where he became something he feared, then his task was not to escape that vision. It was to understand it, and to change himself before changing tomorrow again. As the night deepened, the orphan sat upright, eyes open, listening to the quiet city. The mirror rested beside him, silent and waiting. This time he did not feel watched. He felt challenged. The orphan began to notice something strange about the mirror. It could show the streets, the people, the moments where choices mattered. It could reveal fear, pain, even fleeting glimpses of joy. But it never showed what lay inside him. Never the thoughts that drove his hands. Never the courage that hardened silently in his chest. Never the tenderness that rose unexpectedly, even in a world that had always seemed too cruel. One evening he sat with the mirror before him, unwrapping it carefully. He expected visions. He expected warnings. He expected chaos. But the glass stayed dim, almost calm, reflecting only a faint outline of the ruined room and the boy himself, hunched over it. He stared at the reflection, and for the first time he saw something the mirror could not show. The weight inside him, the fear, the guilt, the hope, the compassion, all of it was his own. It was not written in glass or stone, or any road he had seen before. It was alive in him, shaped by what he chose to carry. Not by what the future demanded. Not by what had been forced upon him. The realization hit slowly. The mirror could show outcomes. It could hint at consequence. But it could not teach intention. It could not measure courage. It could not reveal the love he could give or the mercy he could practice. That had to come from him alone. The orphan breathed deeply, sitting cross-legged, hands steady on the glass. He felt something shift in the pit of his stomach, a quiet steadiness he had never known. The mirror no longer seemed like a burden. It was a guide but not a master. The future was not bound to its visions, it was bound to his heart. He began to test this understanding. When he approached the streets, he did not check the mirror first. He walked with careful attention, his eyes wide yet unafraid. When he saw someone in need, he acted, not for the mirror, not for visions, not for certainty. He acted simply because it was the right thing to do. Slowly he began to notice subtle changes. Faces that had appeared worried now relaxed. Hands that had trembled steadied. Small kindnesses rippled outward in ways the mirror had never shown. And inside him, the fear that had once gripped his heart began to loosen. The mirror, when he looked at it, seemed to respond. Its images softened, less sharp, less insistent. Where before he had glimpsed only danger or regret, now he saw possibility, paths that twisted but did not break. Shadows that could be lightened, pain that could be eased. The orphan realized that the glass had never been fixed. The future it revealed depended on him, not on some preordained fate, not on the visions themselves. The mirror was a tool, but it was his intention, his compassion, and his courage that shaped what might come. He acted without checking first. He helped without certainty. He risked without knowing the outcome. And each time, the world shifted in small but meaningful ways. By the time the moon rose high in the sky, the orphan felt something entirely new. Freedom. Not freedom from consequence. Not freedom from risk. Freedom from the illusion that knowing tomorrow gave him power. True freedom, the understanding that what mattered was not what the mirror showed but what he chose to do. He wrapped the mirror carefully and placed it aside. The visions could wait. The world could wait. His choices, however small, would not. For the first time he acted without asking the future for permission. And in that, he began to understand what the mirror could never show. The orphan stepped into the streets without looking at the mirror. The sun was pale, casting long, soft shadows across the worn cobblestones. People moved around him as they always did, busy, distracted, unaware. The world pressed on, oblivious to the weight he carried and the power he had once glimpsed in that glass. For the first time he acted purely on instinct and compassion, without consulting the mirror for reassurance. He noticed a small girl struggling to carry a basket of fruit. No visions warned him of what might happen. No future flashed in the glass. He simply knelt and lifted the basket, balancing it on his shoulder, and smiled. She blinked in surprise, then ran forward to catch up with her mother. Relief and gratitude hung briefly in the air, fading as life moved along. But the orphan felt it deeply, a warm pulse he had never known. He continued. A stray dog darted into the path of a cart, its fur bristling in fear. Without hesitation he shouted, waving his hands, guiding the animal to safety. A man called after him, irritation in his voice, but the orphan ignored it. Nothing mattered except that the danger had passed. No mirror had told him what to do. He had chosen the right action simply because it was the right action. Each decision built something the mirror could never show: trust, courage, kindness. Each step affirmed that the future was no longer dictated by visions or warnings. He did not need proof. He only needed the clarity of his own heart. The mirror, when he glanced at it from the corner of his eye, seemed to fade. The glass was darker, quieter, less insistent. No longer did it push images before him like a teacher scolding for mistakes. Its power waned as his own choices grew stronger, independent. He realized then that the glass had never truly been his guide. It had only been a reflection of fear and desire, magnified and clarified. The real shaping of tomorrow came from living, from choosing, from acting when no one could promise that anything would turn out as hoped. Hours passed. People moved, conversations drifted by, and the orphan continued along the paths he had once wandered blindly. Each small action, each quiet kindness, sent ripples into the day, unseen yet meaningful. A smile here. A helping hand there. A step toward someone in need without hesitation. By evening he felt a shift inside himself. The weight of knowing had lifted, replaced with a calm certainty that he was capable of influencing what he could. Not all that might happen, not every outcome, but the pieces he could touch. The mirror lay folded in his bag. It was no longer a crutch, no longer a burden. Its glass no longer dictated the rhythm of his life. He could act freely, without visions, without fear, without proof. And for the first time he knew what it meant to live fully in the present. For the first time he walked forward without looking behind him. The orphan returned to the abandoned building one last time. The place that had once felt heavy with waiting now seemed almost empty, calm, patient, as if it had been holding its breath for him to arrive. He laid the mirror carefully on the dusty floor, wrapped in the cloth that had carried it through so many nights. The silence was profound. No whispers. No shifting shadows. Only the soft creak of the ruined beams overhead. He hesitated. One last glance at the glass. The surface was dark, dull, almost ordinary. No visions shimmered. No flickers of the future danced before his eyes. It was quiet, powerless, unassuming. And in that quiet he felt a strange sense of release. The weight of knowing had been immense. For so long, he had carried the burden of futures that were not yet written, trying to choose between fear and hope, risk and kindness. Now the mirror no longer held any answers. It no longer dictated the shape of tomorrow. Its last lesson had been learned. He picked up the mirror one final time and set it gently against the wall. The glass caught the faint light of the setting sun, reflecting only his face, ordinary, thin, marked by hunger and by survival, but whole in a way it had never been before. The orphan breathed deeply, filling his lungs with the cool evening air. For the first time in years he felt unbound. No images. No warnings. No weight pressing down on him from an uncertain future. The dark glass was still, and in its stillness he understood what freedom truly meant. He stepped back from the mirror. He did not take it with him. He did not need it. The city stretched before him, streets filled with people unaware of the choice, courage and compassion that now lived quietly within him. The world moved forward, imperfect, dangerous, yet alive. And he would move with it, not guided by visions, but by his own steady heart. The mirror went dark and the orphan smiled faintly. He had faced the unknown without guidance. He had acted without proof. And in doing so, he had learned that the power to shape tomorrow had never been in the glass. It had always been in him. With a final glance at the abandoned place, he turned and walked into the evening, steps steady, eyes open, heart unafraid. The future waited, uncertain but no longer threatening. And he was ready to meet it. Years passed and the orphan, now a young man, walked the streets with a quiet confidence. The city had changed but so had he. Where once he had been unseen, tentative and cautious, he now moved with purpose. People noticed him, not with fear, not with suspicion, but with acknowledgement. He did not demand attention. He did not seek admiration. He simply existed fully, offering kindness and support where it was needed, responding to life rather than hiding from it. He remembered the mirror, once a burden that showed him paths he could not yet understand. It no longer haunted him. He had learned that the power to shape tomorrow had never been in the glass. It had been in his choices, in the courage to act without certainty, and in the compassion he carried quietly inside him. One morning, he helped an elderly woman carry water from the street fountain. Another day, he guided a lost child back to their home, listening patiently to their fears. A stray dog followed him sometimes, settling at his feet without command. Small acts, unnoticed by the world, but each one built something larger. A life of meaning, a network of trust, a legacy of care. He could not know how each act would ripple through the future. He did not need to. The fear that had once paralyzed him was gone, replaced with understanding. Tomorrow could be uncertain, but his presence in it mattered. The orphan, once nameless, had become a quiet force of good. People began to come to him, not for guidance from visions but for his kindness, his steadiness. They trusted him because he acted without expectation, without proof. He became a friend, a helper, someone who listened without judgment. And in return he found what he had always sought, belonging. Not imposed, not demanded, but earned through action and heart. Even the memories of fear that the mirror had once forced upon him felt distant, almost unreal. They had shaped him, yes, but they did not define him. He had chosen over and over to act with care, to step forward despite uncertainty, and in doing so, he had built a future stronger than any glass could have shown. As evening fell, he stood on a quiet street corner, watching the sun sink behind the rooftops. Children played nearby. Strangers smiled at one another. Life continued, messy, imperfect, unpredictable. And he felt at peace. For the first time he understood that love and forgiveness, offered freely without guarantee, were stronger than any certainty the future could offer. That the legacy of kindness, not knowledge, shaped what came next. He closed his eyes, feeling the wind on his face. He was no longer the boy abandoned, the one unseen and unnamed. He was someone who had learned to live fully, to shape life with intent, and to trust that the choices made in courage could carry meaning far beyond his own sight. The orphan had become a man who had built his future without seeing it, and in that he had finally found the life he had longed for.